Okay, I think just from just kind of an injury update, it's good to have Leonard practice, good to have Gerald practice. Obviously, those are critical guys. The rest of them, Somo's still limited, Janie still limited. I don't think I'm missing anybody else. If there is, ask me. But Antoine was, yeah, he's out. He's got, when you get, what he had was an ear infection, and so it just takes a few days to get that back. He's on medication, obviously, so I suspect he'll be ready to play, but we'll monitor that closely.
When will Soma and Ajane go on the trip?
Yeah, I'm going to bring them. Because if at nothing else, that's 2 more days of rehab. Gary, where we can just try to get them better. And then we get the bye next week. So I think the worst case scenario is by Cal.
Right.
that they're really 100% ready to go. But we'll see where they're at. We'll see where they're at Saturday at kickoff time.
So you described your defensive kind of pass defense strategy as coverage oriented the other day because of the youth that you have back there.
Right.
Is getting Gerald back, does that give you a little bit more confidence to take more chances, or is it more just the overall youth?
I think every game, first of all, is different. This game is obviously extremely unique. Playing Washington State, they just have such a different style of which they do things. There's so many matchup things that you look at, and the one thing about our conference is week in and week out, you're going to play great receivers. Whether it's the Arizona schools or Washington State or whoever it is, you go on and on. It's going to be Cal, it's going to be UCLA. You're going to have great receivers. So the key for us, as much of anything, is to continue to try to build their confidence, one in themselves, that they can play a little bit more aggressive without having to hold and grab and do those things. 2, belief in the scheme and understanding that they have a firm understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And when we can continue to build that, then it's a little bit easier to be more aggressive up front, to add an extra rusher, to play a little bit more man-to-man. And so I think we're gradually moving in that direction. We're making more plays on the ball than we did earlier in the year. We just need to continue to build upon that.
Justin said that on the final drive against Utah, it was a 4-man rush the entire time. There was no blitzing or whatever. Do you have any input on that, or do you just leave it to?
No, I was on the headset with Justin the entire time. And the key was for us to understand they needed a touchdown. That they had to have a touchdown, and the moment you start adding the 5th and 6th rushers, now you're putting yourself in one-on-one scenarios on the perimeter where, if you get beat, you give up a touchdown, like we saw against Arizona State on the, I think it was a 70-something yarder there.
That was a blitz.
Yeah, it was a one high. It was a man-to-man situation for Kevon, where if you don't make the tackle, it can create a big play. So we knew they had to score a touchdown. We felt good about our pass rush against their defensive front. We let the quarterback scramble. We lost contain and we let them scramble. So our 4-man rush didn't get done what we were hoping to get done. So it all has to work together for the defense to work accordingly.
In your years at Washington, did you learn anything more about managing a game in wet conditions than you didn't already know from having playing down here so much?
Well, yeah, sure, there is. I think the first is, how wet is it? There's one thing when it's wet and it rained or it's misty, because you get a lot of that in Seattle. It's another when it is raining and it is the ball is really wet and I refer to it as soggy. What I learned is when it is that way, you get the ball in the hands of the people that you can trust, that you can count on. We had a game a year ago against Arizona where it was the worst weather I've ever been part of, and I think Bishop Sankey carried the ball 40 times. I was just going to give it to the guy that I knew I could trust with the ball in his hand. So it varies. Every game is different. We worked a lot of wet ball stuff earlier in the week this week just to try to get the guys prepared, the receivers, the quarterback, the center, the running back. So, we work it to get yourself as best prepared as we can. And then we have to assess it Saturday. There's going to be some moisture. To what degree, we don't know. It's the Palouse. It can change any minute.
So last week, Justin carried the ball only a handful of times.
Right.
Was that just game flow? Was that a trust issue with the fumbles?
No. It was. I think it was game flow. It's not ideal, quite honestly. You know, Mike. I wish we were giving him the ball a little bit more, and that's as much me as anybody else. So I just think we need to manage that a little better and trust Justin. He's a good player. He's a good runner. He had a heck of a run late there in the fourth quarter for us. So just need to get him involved a little sooner into the game so that he's part of the flow of it all.
Washington State's offense gets a lot of the headlines, but is there anything notable that their defense has? Like, what are some of the strengths?
I think the strength of their defense is up front. I think they have 3 really quality defensive linemen that play hard. I have a great deal of respect for their defensive line coach, Joe Salavea. He gets those guys to play hard. 2, I think their red zone defense is arguably the best in our conference. You know, they're there a lot, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, but they keep people out of the end zone. It's about a 50% ratio where they're holding people out of the end zone. So those are the 2 things that really stand out to me, that jump out to me. They create turnovers. They get after the football. They're aggressive in the secondary, and they're well coached. You know, I mean, it's not ideal. Their games are just different games, and Coach Leach has their own style of which they do things. They're not as concerned about the score, and they know their defense is going to have to play a lot of plays. When you throw the ball 80 times a game and run 117 plays or whatever they run sometimes, that means your defense is going to play a lot of plays too, and they're going to have to give up some yards because that's just the flow of the game. But that doesn't mean that they aren't well coached and they don't play hard. They do.
Along the lines of Justin, do you feel like maybe you want to preserve Buck a little bit more for the fourth quarter too to finish?
You know, I think there's something to be said about that. You know, ultimately the goal is to win the game, to try to win the game, and every game, like I said, is different. There's games when we throw it more, we run it more, early, late. I mean, there's always the game plan and then what the defense is presenting to us. So, sure, I would love that. By giving Justin, a handful more carries in the first and second quarter, that's less carries for Buck early that maybe he could have later in the game.
So last week you were a little hesitant to use Andre Hidari to kick in that situation. The wind was obviously a big factor. Are you more confident in him health-wise this week, and does the weather play into those decisions as well?
It will. Again, I don't know the exact wind conditions and all those things. I have the utmost confidence in Zach and Connor with the snap and the hold, whether wet or not. I've the confidence in those guys. I'll assess Andre in pregame, and I'll talk to him after pregame to see exactly where he's at, what he's comfortable with distance-wise and all those things, and then have a plan, depending on the score and the flow of the game and all those things. But all those factor into ultimately making a decision.
Is he 100%?
I don't think so, no. I don't think quite yet.